Chapter 12. Home again. Days lengthen into weeks and weeks into months, while months lengthen into years, bringing changes to all. Such had been the case with Eva, but her life had been filled with active service, until she scarcely noted the swift passing of time. After her healing at the camp meeting, she entered the ministry, filling calls as they were given to her, and her labors were so effectual that soon there came more calls than she could possibly fill. Although very busy in the Lord's service, she did not fail to think of her own physical need. And with the proper food, plenty of bodily exercise, and fresh air, her crooked body soon began to straighten, her face to fill out, and her pale cheeks to take on a natural color. God had indeed performed a perfect cure. As she developed along physical lines, she also developed along spiritual lines, and all could see in Eva a life that was wholly dedicated to God. Her labors among the young people brought noted results, and numbers of young men and women were won to the Lord through her efforts. She never failed to tell them to make her promise theirs, for she truly claimed it as her own, and felt that all things she desired would be given to her if she would only abide in Him. For 3 years, she had not failed to ask the Lord daily to touch her father's heart, and she was asking and relying on her favorite promise. Not one word had she received from him since she had left home that September morning 3 years before. Many times she desired to go home, and how she longed to see her father. Although he had driven her away from her home, she loved him still and felt the deepest sympathy and pity for him. She saw it was the enemy working through him, and felt that he would be a real father if he could only be made to see himself. Every night before retiring, she would lift him up before the Lord in prayer. After 2 years of evangelistic work, Eva received a call from a congregation in the state of Kentucky to accept the pastorate. As she had held a meeting there, and the call was unanimous, she accepted, taking another sister with her as her assistant. There we shall leave her for a while as we pay a visit to the Grant family. There seemed to be no special change in the Grant family for some time after Eva left. Mr. Grant worked harder than ever and kept aloof from all his neighbors, never visiting any of them unless it was on some special business. As his money was no longer spent for liquor, he found he could use it to good advantage in stocking his place, and also getting necessities for himself and family. The buggy was discarded for a new Ford, and the rich fruitage of his fields spoke plainly that he was a prosperous farmer. Many changes were made about the place. Fences were built, sagging gates were put on hinges, and the entire place took on an attractive appearance. But while the place became more attractive, all these changes brought no change to Mr. Grant nor his wife. Eva's name was never mentioned, or if it was, never with any degree of relenting. And so the fall and the summer of the first year passed since she left, and autumn set in again. Mr. Grant had not been tiring in his efforts to accomplish great things that year. He was pleased with the yield of his crops, but he had been laboring early and late for all of them, and as he disposed of the hay, wheat, and corn at a goodly gain, and housed his feed for winter, he began to make plans for the next year. He wanted more land that he might cultivate crops on a larger scale. This was not denied him, for he rented a large tract from a widow who lived near them. And as he was ambitious, he planned big things for the next fall. So the winter passed and the spring of the following year advanced, finding Robert Grant working early and late. But as warm weather came and he found that he was not as strong in physique as formerly, and after having to be carried from the field, he thought best to consult a physician. So the old family doctor was consulted, who told him his condition was such that he could not exert himself without danger, as his heart was in a very bad condition, and any physical exertion or excitement might prove fatal to him at any moment. This was bad news to him, as he had planned largely for that summer, and now he could see his plans all being destroyed. As he could not be in the field, he must leave the work to others, and he knew none would do as he desired. Mr. Grant's physical condition did not soften his disposition, and he became very cross and irritable. The work did not progress as fast as he desired, and this only irritated him the more. Many were the scenes between him and his boys until in the midst of hay harvest, Harry, feeling that he could stand it no longer, found employment elsewhere. This left Mr. Grant either to lose all his hay or find another hand. Harry's leaving only made Mr. Grant more irritable, and he could not keep a hired hand more than a few days. Poor Edgar took all the abuse, although doing all that one of his age could possibly do. The oats and wheat were harvested, but the oats were never threshed as heavy rain set in, and the oats sprouted in the shock. Only a part of the corn was gathered because of heavy fall rains that made it impossible to get into the field. A great amount of this rotted in the field. Of course, the widow's rent must be paid, and after summing up the expense of the summer, Mr. Grant found he had farmed at a heavy loss. It took more than was raised on the widow's land to pay her rent. So Mr. Grant decided that the next year he would only try to farm the place on which he lived, as Harry had left him and he could not keep hired help. He had made great plans the year before, only to see them carried away as a leaf before a strong gale. As cool weather came on, Mr. Grant improved in health so much that early spring found him again in the field pushing the spring work. His disposition was no better than the previous year, and many remarked how Edgar had their sympathy, and it would not be long until he too would do as Harry had done. Now, with the approach of warm weather, Mr. Grant awakened to the fact that his improvement in health was only of short duration. One day in early May, he was driving some hogs from one pasture to another, and as they became somewhat unruly, it took quite a bit of energy and exertion to get them to the desired place. And in so doing, he became very much heated. After closing the gate, he sat down to rest for a few moments, and when he tried to rise, he found he was unable to stand. He gradually grew worse, and the old family physician was again called. Mr. Grant was forbidden to leave the house for a number of days. Then he was told to visit the doctor at his office. A few days of rest, and he became able to be up and about again, and so called at the doctor's office. After a thorough examination, the old doctor laid his hand on Mr. Grant's shoulder, and looking him in the face said, "Bob, I have known you for some time. Do you consider me your friend?" Mr. Grant looked at the doctor with a puzzled expression upon his countenance as he said, "I have always counted you such, but why do you ask me such a question?" Ignoring the question asked by Mr. Grant, the doctor continued, "If you consider me your friend, and I know something about you that is of vital importance that, you would expect me as your friend to reveal it to you, would you not?" "I surely would," replied Mr. Grant. "Very well then," said the doctor. "I shall feel free then to tell you about your condition. You are in far worse condition now than you were when you last called upon me. I advise you not to worry, exert yourself, or become angry, for the condition of your heart is such that it cannot stand any more pumping than what it is doing at present. You need exercise and plenty of fresh air, and I advise long walks each day, but do not walk fast enough for any strain on your body whatsoever. Walk very slowly, for you have a bad heart leakage. Your heart is doing all the work it can do now to keep you alive, and any excessive strain will surely prove fatal. By being very cautious, you may live for some time, but that is the only hope you have. For I can do you no good other than giving you advice, and there is nothing known to medical science so far as I know that can give you the relief you desire. I am telling you this because I am your friend, and if there is anything that you want to finish in your life, now is the time for you to get busy." The doctor kept his hand resting upon Mr. Grant's shoulder as he walked with him to the door of his office. And as Mr. Grant turned to walk away, the doctor said, "By the way, Bob, I saw Eva the other day, and isn't she looking well? It is nothing short of marvelous what a change there has been in that girl. You need some of that girl's faith, for she has brought health from a source unknown to the majority of people. She is a wonder. I heard the first sermon she preached, and it has stayed with me. The last time I visited her, I thought her condition as serious as I now think yours. But a wonderful change has been wrought in her. My boy, you should be proud of a girl like that." Mr. Grant bade the doctor good day, and getting into his Ford, started on his homeward trip. But there was a different man returned to the Grant home, then left that morning to visit the doctor at St. Elmo. He knew that the doctor had spoken the truth to him, and he also knew there were many things which he needed to do before he could feel satisfied. And the prime thing was to see Eva. The family noted the change in him, and none welcomed it more than Edgar, for he had been the one who had suffered because of his father's anger and irritable disposition. He followed the doctor's advice that he might have some time to try to undo some of the things which he had done. May passed away and June came on, and with it a letter from Eva to her father, the contents of which was a great surprise to him. but the letter was welcomed far more than he could express. Now he could write her and invite her home, as she informed him that soon she was to be a bride. And the letter was an invitation for him to attend her wedding. The invitation brought a reply from him, and also an invitation for her to come home for the wedding, also stating the condition of his health. No word of apology was mentioned in the letter, but the invitation to come home was enough to bring praises from Eva's lips as she read his letter, the first one she had ever received from her father. Through blinding tears, which were tears of joy, she read John 15:7 and said, "I thank thee, Lord, that I have made that promise my promise. I can surely rely upon it, for I have found thee faithful that promised." She soon wrote her father that nothing could have been done for her on his part that would have afforded her more satisfaction in the way of giving her a wedding present than to plan a home wedding for her. 3 days before the date set for the wedding, Mr. Grant drove into town to meet the train that was bringing Eva back home. As she alighted from the train, tears coursed down his cheeks as he looked upon a form almost completely straightened, a rounded face and pink cheeks so unlike the pale, little crooked form he had seen leave his place 3 years before. He could scarcely believe his own eyes. Could this be the same girl? His mind traveled back over the lapse of years, and he could see in the girl before him a girl who several years before had stood by his side, had taken the step which this one was about to take. Eva's face recalled to him a wedding day of more than a quarter of a century before, when a girl just like Eva became his wife. He received Eva with open arms and in tears said, "Oh Eva, I could not keep back the tears when I saw you, for you are a living picture of your mother when she married me more than 25 years ago." Eva too was greatly moved at the reception given her by her father, and did not try to hide her tears, but said, "I am glad that I resemble my mother, for I remember her as the best woman that I ever knew." With this thought came the memory of the last words she ever heard her mother utter: "Mama can always depend on her little Eva." The drive home was made almost in complete silence, for both were filled with their own thoughts. What occupied Mr. Grant's mind was never known, but Eva could not help but recall the time just 3 years before, when she traveled over the same road a fugitive from home, driven away by an angry father without 1 penny in her purse. As they reached the brow of the hill which brought the Grant home in full view, Eva glanced to the side of the road and saw the tree whose shade protected her from the September sun, when she cast a last long glance at the home she was leaving, and where she lifted her voice to God and received the necessary grace to enable her to go on with him. The picture was real to her mind, and settling herself down farther in the cushion, she said, "I thank thee, Lord, for it all." The same hard lines were upon her stepmother's face, but she did not remonstrate at Eva's warm, affectionate greeting, and like her husband expressed surprise at Eva's appearance. She could scarcely believe that it could be the same girl who left 3 years before. Edgar was almost beside himself with delight at having Eva back again, and as soon as he could whisper to her, said, "I knew all the time that your religion would not make you crazy." Her bedroom was almost as she had left it. The same bed in the same corner of the room, the same dresser, everything almost as she had left it 3 years before. Memories of the past flitted through her mind as she gazed about her. It was in this room that she had received the never-to-be-forgotten Christmas present, and the poison in her drinking water. It was here also where she had spent so many lonely hours and days of intense pain and suffering. It was here too that she had felt the healing touch of God, and many times received his blessing upon her soul. The spot was indeed dear to her. Lifting her eyes heavenward, she said, "I thank thee, Lord, that in all the trials thou hast caused me to triumph. Help me to be more faithful in the future than I have in the past, that I may hear of thee, as I have of my mother, that you can always depend upon me." After supper, Eva found her father sitting on a seat under the grape arbor, and seating herself beside him, she told him of her plans for the future, and of the young man who was the man of her choice. He was a young man who had been won to the Lord through her efforts, a noble young man of whom any young woman could be proud to say, "He is my choice." Mr. Grant also told Eva of his condition and what the doctor had told him, closing with the remark, Daughter, I could not die until I had seen you, and known that everything is all right, for I did you wrong. I am so sorry now that I did it, and would give the world if I could only recall my actions. Laying her hand upon her father's shoulder, Eva said, Do not worry about that any longer, Papa, for everything is forgiven, and you only did the right thing by me after all. It seemed so hard for me to bear at the time, but if you had not pushed me out, I might not have been as useful in the hand of God, as I have been and done the good for others that I have. Through my leaving home, I have received some valuable lessons and have been a blessing to others. No doubt I should never have met the noble young man who is to be my husband, and whom I love so much had I remained home. You see, God has a purpose in everything, and works in mysterious ways that he might bring all things to pass for our good. I am glad that you look at it in that light, replied Mr. Grant, but it has been laying heavily upon me for some time, and I am glad that you are back and that I can make things right with you again in a measure. The twilight hour passed, and still they sat there talking. The moon shone from a clear sky, making their surroundings almost as clear as day. At a late hour, Mr. Grant suggested that they retire. I should like to have one prayer with you before retiring. May I? Surely you may, said Mr. Grant as he knelt beside the bench on which he had been sitting. And this will not be the first time that I have been on my knees, for I have bent them many times the past few weeks. There under the grape arbor, father and daughter knelt, as Eva poured out her heart to God in praise and thanksgiving for his many blessings to her, and for the privilege of again being at home with her father. How she entreated the Lord to have mercy upon her father, to instruct him and lead him into the light, and also to lay a healing hand upon him. Mr. Grant's tears fell with hers as she petitioned God in his behalf, and when they arose from their knees, he placed his arm about her shoulder and said, Daughter, I feel better now than I have felt for some time. I do not feel such heaviness in my chest as I have had heretofore. Eva looked up and smilingly replied, Jesus has lifted the load. I have prayed that he would, replied Mr. Grant, as they turned and walked up the well-beaten path toward the house. At her room door, Eva turned with a cheery good night, and again Mr. Grant said, Daughter, I'm proud of you, for you have been a great help to me tonight. Again there came a voice out of the silent past. Mama can always depend on her little Eva.